Hi guys, today I'm going to tell you all about jelly gouache, how it's different from regular gouache, and how I've been painting with it. I've been using it for about 3 months now, so I feel a little bit qualified to tell you my thoughts on it, and also give some tips on how to paint with gouache in general. I think this set is really great for both those who are new to gouache and those who love using gouache but want to have a lot more paint handy. So I will tell you why and give you some more tips in the rest of this video. So here I am. I'm opening this box for the first time and taking all the covers off of each little box of paint. So if you've never used gouache before, it's basically opaque watercolor, and it's super fun to paint with because you can paint in thick layers and use light colors after you've already painted in the darker colors. Which with watercolor, if you paint a dark color, you can't put anything lighter over top of that, and there's no changing the color unless you make a darker color on top. So I learned how to paint gouache using M-Gram artist gouache, and I'm still getting the hang of gouache in general as a medium. The thing is that other brands of professional grade gouache will be way more expensive for tiny tubes of paint than this is, so I really felt more comfortable experimenting and learning using this gouache because I knew there was a lot to use, and so I was able to have a lot more fun using it. So I've done a little bit of research and found that there are a few common questions that people have about this set, so I'll do my best to answer them. One worry about this set is that it's hard to open or messy to use, and it is a little bit messy, and the paint is so thick that if you get it somewhere it can really spread everywhere. And so you have to just be careful and have paper towel and water handy. One trick when you open the cup is to scrape the foil lid on the edge of the cup to get all that paint in there and not waste any. Another question people have is, will it dry out? How long will it last? So it's not watertight and it will dry out a little bit, but you can easily add more water and mix it up again. I've seen people add warm water to make it even easier to mix it. I've had it open since January and I haven't added much water, and it really stays wet and usable. I just spray it with a little bit of water every time I paint and mix it if it's looking really dry. One important thing to look for in gouache is its thickness and opacity. So this paint is very thick and very sticky, so it's almost too sticky. The consistency while mixing with water can be really hard to get right. You just have to get used to how much water you need to add. And as far as opacity goes, how thick the paint is when you put it over another color, as you can see in these swatches, it varies by color, but most are really quite opaque. However, the whites in this set need to be layered a little bit more to be opaque compared to other gouache whites that I have used. And that brings me to another note that there are two types of white in this set. They're not copies of each other. They didn't give you extra white just so you could use more. One is a titanium white and one is a zinc white. So titanium white is best used for subtle whites or mixing with other colors to make them lighter. And zinc white is best for those bright white opaque highlights. And finally, is it a good quality paint set? Should I try it? Well, it's not artist grade or professional grade, so if you're selling your art, then I would probably go for something a little bit more expensive and high quality, but I think this is still really good value if you're just starting out using gouache or you've never used it and you want to give it a try. And also for people like me who have other gouache sets but want to experiment and have more fun with it. Some other things I would point out are that the set is not very portable. It's heavy, so I wouldn't take this out on a field sketching day. The blue color of the palette, and I know this box comes in different colors, but having a colored palette can be deceiving when you mix colors because if you're using white paper, it's going to look different when you put it down on the paper. And lastly, it dries really quickly when you put it on the paper, so you can definitely re-wet it at any time with more water, but it seems to absorb really quickly into the paper, which makes it just a little bit harder to blend. But overall, this paint set is a really good value, really great for beginners, really good for trying things out. Super fun to use. You don't have to squeeze out paint tubes, and deal with wasting paint. You get all the colors that you need, and yeah, it's a super cute box too. So I wanted to show you pretty much all of the paintings that I've done with this gouache so far. They've all been in this sketchbook, and I started off a little bit rough, and so I'm still trying to develop my style with gouache. So first I have this squirrel, which was done with pretty thick paint, and as all of the paintings in the sketchbook had colored pencil on top, because this paper is really thick watercolor paper, which is great for gouache, but it's also really textured, which means it's a little bit hard to get details with paint. So the second thing I painted was a fox in kind of the same way as the squirrel. Really thick paint, and still getting the hang of mixing the colors. And the reason I was having a problem mixing the colors was because I was using the blue palette, which made it harder to see what the color would actually look like. So I would do these samples a lot to see what the color would look like on white. And this is the third thing, was this possum and her babies, which was very thin, mostly with a little bit of thick for the black. And then my first raccoon, which was super thin paint over a layer of really bright yellow. And then finally this raccoon, which I really loved doing, and I thought it was super cute with all the clovers, and I really simplified the fur. So I will show you how I went about painting it. So my number one tip for gouache is to work from thin paint to thick paint. And so I always start with pretty much painting the whole thing with a really thin layer of a bright color, either warm or cool, depending on what I want my painting to look like. I'll start with thinner paint mixed with way more water, and then just block in those larger areas. And then as I add more details, I start to use thicker paint with less water. And always test your colors to see how they dry, especially if you use a colored palette. Some gouache colors might dry differently than how they look when they're wet, so having a little test strip of the same paper that you're using can be really helpful. So one nice feature of gouache is that you can blend it with a wet brush and blend the colors together in a painting, which with this paint I would say works better when you have a thicker layer of paint down, as the paper absorbs it really quickly. But that also depends on your paper as well. So you can subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more painting videos in the future and other tutorials. You can find me on Instagram, and you can share your artwork with me there. Comment below if you tried this paint, what you think of it, and if you like it. And that's all for now. I will just be quiet and let you watch the rest of this painting in peace. See you next time.
hesitate to call on me for anything. Like you said, a human being, I want to make you take that chance. Things have been different for me ever since I met Hildy. I've never met anyone quite like her.